The letter arrived on a Thursday. Not the one from the hospital. She had been carrying that one for 4 months already. Folded in the inside pocket of her coat, the paper soft from being handled. This letter was from a solicitor, confirming that the business registration was complete, that the small shop unit on Market Street had been secured on a 5-year lease. Pump, pump, pump. That the account she had transferred her remaining savings into had been received and was held in trust for the named beneficiary. The named beneficiary was her husband. The husband who, at the exact moment she was reading this letter, was having dinner at a restaurant in town with a woman named Paula. The village of Hartwell knew about Paula. Hartwell knew everything. What Hartwell did not know was that Ellen Morris, soft Ellen, forgive everything Ellen, the woman they had been shaking their heads about for 2 years, had just spent the last money she had in the world securing her husband's future. She put the letter in her coat pocket next to the hospital one. Then she made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table and looked out at the garden she had planted and tended for 15 years. And she felt something that was not peace exactly, but was close enough to it that she decided to call it that. This is Ellen's story. 5, and I want to tell it carefully because she deserves that. Before we go any further, like this video, please. If you can already feel where this story is going, that like button is the least we can do for Ellen. Hit it. Subscribe if you haven't. It costs nothing. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. Now let me tell you about Ellen. Ellen Morris was 47 years old and had lived in Hartwell her entire life. She was the kind of woman that small communities have opinions about, not because she was dramatic or difficult, but because she was visible in the specific way of people who are genuinely good. She ran the community food drive every December. She remembered birthdays without needing to be reminded. She was the person you called when things went wrong and you needed someone who would actually come. She had married Martin Morris at 26. Martin was charming in the way that certain men are charming, effortlessly, without apparent effort, in a way that made you feel singled out when his attention landed on you. He had grown up in Hartwell, too, and he had a quick laugh and an easy confidence, and a habit of making promises that were genuinely meant at the time of making. The promises had a way of not surviving contact with reality. Martin had started a business at 30 that failed at 33. Ellen worked extra shifts at the pharmacy, where she was a dispensing technician to cover the gap. Martin started another business at 35 that went better for a while, then badly, then required a loan that Ellen co-signed. She had signed because she believed in him. She had always believed in him in the patient, slightly exhausted way of someone who has been believing in the same person for a long time without quite receiving the belief back. The affairs. There had been 2 that Ellen knew about before Paula, had been handled the way Ellen handled most things, with a private grief that, she did not inflict on other people, followed by a decision to continue that most of Hartwell found baffling. The village did not say this unkindly. Mostly. They said it with the concerned frustration of people who genuinely cared about Ellen and couldn't understand why she kept absorbing what Martin kept doing. She's too soft, they said. She lets him walk all over her. She's got no backbone. Someone needs to tell Ellen that you don't have to take that. Her friend Diane had told her, more than once, sat across from her at this same kitchen table with coffee between them and said it directly. Ellen, you deserve better. Leave him. Why do you keep staying? Ellen had always smiled and said she was fine. She was not fine in the way Diane meant. She was fine in a different way, which was that she knew something about her situation that she had not yet told anyone, and that knowledge had reorganized what mattered and what didn't in ways that Diane couldn't see. The diagnosis had come 4 months ago, pancreatic cancer, advanced. The oncologist, a careful man named Dr. Reeves, had explained it with the particular precision of someone who has learned that clarity is a form of compassion. The treatment options were limited by the stage. The prognosis was 8 to 12 months. The goal would be managing quality of life. Ellen had driven home from that appointment and sat in the car outside her house for 25 minutes. Then she had gone inside and made Martin's dinner because he had said he'd be home at 7. And she was not going to be the kind of person who stopped doing the ordinary things just because she'd received extraordinary news. She told nobody, not Diane, not her sister in Manchester, not Martin. She told nobody because she had spent the drive home understanding, with the specific clarity that arrives after genuinely devastating information, exactly how she wanted to spend the time she had left. And the way she wanted to spend it did not include being managed, grieved over, or watched. It included finishing the things she had started, arranging what needed arranging, and being herself, fully, quietly. Without performance, until she couldn't be anymore. One of the things she needed to arrange was Martin's future. This is the part that will make some of you angry. I want to say that up front. What Ellen chose to do with the knowledge that she was dying, who she chose to spend that knowledge on, is going to feel wrong to some people, and I understand that. But it was her choice, and she made it with open eyes. Ellen had known for years that Martin's real dream was a small shop, not the businesses he'd attempted. Those had been attempts at bigger things, at the kind of success that would feel like vindication. What Martin actually wanted, in the private way that people want things, they've stopped believing they're allowed to want, was a small hardware and repair shop. He talked about it occasionally in the evenings, the way people talk about things they've classified as fantasy. If I ever had enough capital, I'd do it properly. Somewhere on Market Street. The kind of place where people come in with a broken thing and leave with it fixed. Nothing fancy. Just useful. Ellen had listened to him say this version of the same thing maybe 30 times over 20 years. She had also for 20 years. Not secretly, exactly, but privately. The savings account was hers, established before they married. Contributed to from her pharmacy salary in small amounts that Martin knew about in the abstract but had never thought about in specifics. It was not a large amount. It was the accumulated product of 20 years of modest, consistent contribution from a woman who had learned early that having something of her own was a form of insurance. She had saved £42,000. It was everything she had. After the diagnosis, she called Patricia Cole, her solicitor, a woman she had used once before for some straightforward estate planning, and explained what she wanted to do. Patricia had listened carefully. Then she had asked Ellen a question that lawyers are sometimes the only people clear-eyed enough to ask. Ellen, is this what you want, Guy? Or is this what you think you should want? Ellen had sat with that. It's what I want, she said. Martin is not a good husband. He might be now. If he had something that was his, something that worked. He's better when things are working. He's always been better when things are working. And if they don't work? If the shop doesn't work? Then I did what I could, Ellen said, and I didn't spend my last months being angry. Patricia had been quiet for a moment, then she had said, "All right, let's do this properly." The shop unit on Market Street was available on a lease. Patricia negotiated the terms. The registration of the business was straightforward. The trust was structured so that Martin would receive the capital and the secured lease after Ellen's death, with a letter explaining everything. Ellen did not tell Martin while she was alive, not because she was hiding it from him in the punishing sense, but because telling him would mean telling him she was dying, and she was not ready to be the person that truth made her in his eyes. She did not want to spend her remaining months being treated carefully. She had spent 47 years being treated carelessly, and she found she preferred it to the alternative. She kept going to work. She kept making dinner. She kept sitting in the garden in the mornings with her tea, watching the birds she had been watching for 15 years. Feeling the autumn air moving through the apple tree she had planted when they first moved in. She kept forgiving Martin, publicly, for Paula. Because the village saw her forgiving, and the village shook its head and said, "Soft and no backbone, and what is wrong with that woman?" And Ellen looked at them from behind her knowledge and felt something that might have been tenderness for how little they were able to see. She was not forgiving Martin because she was weak. She was forgiving Martin because she had decided that the 8 months she had were not going to be spent in bitterness, and because somewhere underneath everything Martin had done and failed to do, and promised and broken, she could still find the man she had married at 26. 5. And she had decided that man deserved a chance that she was, apparently, the only person in a position to give him. Was she right to think that? I don't know. I'm not sure anyone does, but it was her time, and it was her choice, and she made it. Like this video. If Ellen's story is already in your chest, that like button is the least she deserves. Hit it now. Subscribe if you haven't. Drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? Now back to Ellen's final months. Ellen told Diane in February, not about the shop, about the diagnosis. She told her on a Sunday afternoon in Diane's kitchen, over tea, in the specific quiet way of someone who has been carrying something heavy and has decided, finally, to put it down. Diane did not speak for a full minute after Ellen finished. Then she said, "How long have you known?" 4 months, Ellen said. 4 months. Diane's voice was not angry. It was the specific, stunned grief of someone who has just realized they were in the wrong story. "You've been coming to my kitchen for 4 months, and having tea, and letting me talk about Martin and Paula, and I needed things to be normal," Ellen said. "While I could have normal." Diane pressed her hand over her eyes. "Ellen, what do you need? Right now?" "What do you need from me?" "Just this," Ellen said. "Exactly this. Have tea with me." They had tea. Dan cried for most of it. Ellen patted her hand. Martin found out from the hospital. A call from the oncology department about a follow-up appointment that he answered on Ellen's phone because she was in the garden and he was in the kitchen. He came out and stood on the back step and looked at her, and his face was the specific face of a man who has been shown something that reorganizes everything he thought he understood. "Ellen," he said. She looked up from the garden. He didn't know what to say. She could see him cycling through things and rejecting them all. 5. "Come sit with me," she said. He sat with her, she told him. The timeline, the prognosis, what was coming. She told it plainly and without drama because that was how she had decided to handle it. And once she had decided a thing, she was reliable about it. Martin cried. He held her hands and cried in a way she had not seen from him in 20 years of marriage, and she let him, 5, and she held his hands back. She did not tell him about the shop. Not yet. The next 3 months were their best months in a long time. Martin stopped seeing Paula. She found out later, from Diane, who kept track of these things, that he had ended it the week after he found out. He came home from work and ate dinner with her. He sat in the garden. He fixed things around the house. Small things. The kind that had been waiting for years. The kind that pile up in a marriage when one person is always somewhere else. He was, as Ellen had said to Patricia, better when things were working. Hartwell, when the news spread, because news in Hartwell always spread, went quiet in the specific way of a community that has been saying the wrong things. 5's about someone and has just realized it. The head shaking stopped. The soft wife commentary evaporated overnight. Replaced by the community's other mode. The bringing of food, the knocking on doors, the gathering of resources that small places can be extraordinary at when they finally turn in the right direction. Diane organized a rota. People came. Ellen received them with the same gracious calm she brought to everything, and privately found the reversal of their opinions slightly funny. She was not well enough to work by March. By April, she rarely left the house. By May, she rarely left the bedroom. Martin sat with her every evening. Ellen gave the letter to Patricia with instructions for delivery after her death. It was addressed to Martin, in Ellen's handwriting, in an envelope sealed with the specific care of someone who knows they are writing the last thing they will write to someone. Ellen Morris died at home on a Tuesday morning in June. With Martin holding her hand and Diane on the other side and the window open to the garden where the apple tree was in full leaf. Patricia delivered the letter the following Thursday. Martin read it at the kitchen table, the same table where Ellen had sat with her tea and her medical letter and her solicitor's letter and her private, enormous knowledge. The letter explained the shop, the lease, the trust, the £42,000. She explained what she had seen in him, the man who wanted to fix broken things and make them useful again. She explained that she had believed in him for 21 years and that she saw no reason to stop now simply because she was no longer going to be there. She said she was not asking him to be the man she wished he had been. She was asking him to be the man she knew he could still become. She said she had not done this because he deserved it. She had done it because she had chosen to. There was a difference, she wrote, and she wanted him to understand the difference and carry it. She said she was sorry she hadn't told him sooner. She said she had needed the time to be about both of them and not only about her leaving. She said she hoped the apple tree was all right. The last line was, "I loved you more than I was sometimes able to show in a marriage that was sometimes harder than either of us deserved. I hope the shop is everything you wanted it to be. Make it useful." E. Martin sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then he called Diane. He read her the letter over the phone. Diane, who had spent 2 years telling Ellen she was too soft, who had spent those years shaking her head at the same kitchen table where Ellen had hidden her diagnosis, and her plan, and her extraordinary, patient love. Diane did not speak for a while. Then she said she knew exactly what she was doing. She always did, Martin said. His voice was very rough. I just wasn't paying attention. The shop opened on Market Street the following spring. Martin called it Ellen's. He was good at it. That was the thing. Ellen had been right about that, the way she had been right about most things. He fixed things well. He was patient with customers in the specific way of someone who is trying to be better than he was, and it showed, and people responded to it. Hartwell came. Of course they came. Some of them out of loyalty to Ellen's memory. Some out of genuine need. Some, Diane thought, out of the particular human compulsion to witness a story completing itself. Martin fixed their broken things. He made them useful again. On the wall behind the counter, he put a photograph of Ellen in the garden, taken one autumn morning years ago before everything, when she was looking at something off camera and her face was entirely itself, unguarded, calm, present. He put it there so he would see it every day, so that everyone who came in would see it too. Diane came in on the first day the shop was open. She stood at the counter and looked at the photograph for a long time. She would have hated this, she said. Martin looked at her. The fuss, Diane said. She hated fuss. She'd have told you to put it somewhere less prominent. I know, Martin said. I put it there anyway. Diane nodded slowly. Good, she said. Hartwell had called Ellen soft for years. They had meant it as a criticism. The softness of someone who accepts too much, who forgives without justification, who stays when leaving would be the dignified choice. But here is what Ellen knew that Hartwell didn't. Softness and weakness are not the same thing. Ellen had spent the last 8 months of her life making deliberate, considered, eyes-open choices. She had chosen what to tell and what to hold. She had chosen how to spend her time and her money and her love. She had chosen Martin, not blindly. Not out of defeat, but out of the specific, clear-eyed love of a woman who had looked at a complicated person and decided, freely, that his future mattered to her. That is not weakness. That is one of the hardest things a human being can do. And here is the question I want to leave you with. Ellen knew Martin had not been a faithful husband. She knew he had let her down more times than she deserved, and she still spent her last savings building his future. Was Ellen right to do that? Was that love? Or was that a woman who had been conditioned to give everything and take nothing? And if you were Ellen, knowing what she knew, would you have done the same? Leave your answer in the comments. I want the honest one. And tell me where you're watching from. This community is everywhere, and I love knowing where Ellen's story lands. Like this video, for Ellen. Seriously. That like button is right there, and it takes 1 second. Share this with someone who needs it today. Subscribe if you're not already. It's free, and the next story is already coming. See you there.